Hello, this is Dean Radin, and I'm on Your Superior Self.
Hi, I'm Anita Murjani, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hello, this is Dr. Raymond Moody, and this is Your Superior Self.
Hi, Cultural Creatives. I'm Bruce Lipton, and I'm here to join you with Your Superior Self.
Hi, this is Paul Selig, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, everybody? I'm Aubrey Marcus, and this is Your Superior Self.
What's up, guys? Welcome back. I'm Trey Downs, and you're listening to Your Superior Self podcast, a show that helps us remember that the greatness that we're in search for is right here within us. And to help us remember that and point you in the direction of your greatness, I have Doug Cartwright joining the show, the author of the new book, Holy Shit, We're Alive. And in the book, Doug talks about his journey with psychedelics, meditation, silent retreats, astrophysics, neuroscience, philosophy, and all forms of self-healing. It's how he found the purpose of life, how he realized his mistakes and built a new reality. Doug's story is how he shifted his perspective on life, and it's how you can learn to shift yours by picking up this book and reading his journey, his account of his self-transformation. And I want to take a moment and say that even though we talk about psychedelics, and a lot of science now and psychology are becoming more open to psychedelic treatment for things like PTSD, alcoholism, depression. With all that said, I still want to say this, that I think that psychedelic use should be used under controlled environments, under controlled therapeutic environments. I do not suggest that anyone go out and practice psychedelic therapy or use psychedelics in a recreational way. Now, why do I say that? I say that because psychedelics can significantly alter your state of consciousness, can change your state of perception, can change your reality significantly. And to give you an example of that, here is Doug's experience with psychedelics.
My first experience with psychedelics, which was, a big no-no, right? Like growing up in white, conservative Mormon Utah, you're taught that all drugs are basically methamphetamine. And if you do it one time, you'll be addicted and be homeless and then die. Like that's just the narrative. And so after kind of doing some study on the profound effects of psychedelics, I have my first experience. And in that experience, there was a moment where this, I can't use human words for it because it's beyond human understanding, but the way I describe it in the book is this beam of light socks me on the top of the head. And it was the unconditional love from the creator, from the infinite knowing source. And I always say, think of the happiest day of your life, right? That you think that's a 10. This was a whole nother scale, a whole nother 20 that you didn't know was possible. And the biggest takeaway that I initially felt from that was that I didn't have to earn it. There was no checklist. It was like, okay, let's see what you've done. It was available for me all the time. And not only was I the most beautiful creature that God's ever created, but every other person had that as well. And that we all have unlimited access to unconditional, endless bliss, ecstasy, love from the creator. And it doesn't have to be earned. It just is.
That is just one amazing experience. And we talk about Doug's life after that moment with psychedelics, but I cannot stress to you enough having a trained professional there to ground you throughout your journey, because you can have this type of moment where you're experiencing this reality and you take psychedelics and you have a profound experience that basically shatters your entire foundation of your belief system. And what do you do after that? Where do you go? Who do you talk to? You can't come back to the status quo of this reality and proceed with your life and be okay and ignore it and forget it and say, all right, well, that never happened, because you're going to be lying to yourself, because it did happen. And you had these profound moments and you had this profound experience, and now you have to live in this reality with that knowing. So I highly suggest that if you decide to go down that road of psychedelics, that you do the research, you find clinically trained professionals or professionals that are certified in this type of modality, and you take their advice, you follow their programs, and you be very serious about your journey. Now, with that said, I'm really excited about this conversation, and I can't wait for you guys to listen to Doug's personal journey of his healing and self-realization. So without further ado, here is my conversation with the great and the powerful Doug Cartwright.
Hey everybody, this is Doug Cartwright, and this is Your Superior Self.
Dougie Fresh, my man, welcome to the show. Thank you for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Trey.
So let's talk about this book you got. Holy shit, you're alive.
Holy shit, we're alive, baby.
What inspired this?
You know what? It's a really good question. So I've got a lot of really fun stories around my life. And before I really dove into consciousness and spirituality, and I was kind of living like my normal 20-year-old self, I was having a lot of experiences that were pretty amazing and intense as far as, making money and traveling, that were pretty cool, that I remember thinking like, wow, like not too many people get to do this. And so I was always kind of like keeping a mental note of my life and the fun I was having. And then when I turned 27, shit got really weird, really intense, really fast. And really the story and the foundation is in psychedelia, working with psychedelic compounds. And I went so deep down the rabbit hole that for about 2 years of my life, I thought I was living in a movie. Like, I don't know if you've seen The Truman Show, right?
Yeah.
And you're like, is this even real? Like, what is going on? And I had a lot of those moments. And one thing that I did really, really well along the way, and we'll get into some actual stories, but I kept really good notes. And the book kind of just happened, right? I always tell people it's really difficult to write a book, but my book was difficult, but it was extremely smooth. Meaning we didn't have any hiccups. We didn't have any frustrations. We didn't have any like, what turning points, where do we go? It wasn't like this anxious, heavy decision. It was a very smooth process that just took a lot of dedicated, deliberate work. And so I always feel like the book kind of just came out of me. And the intention of the book is to really, eventually to hope, inspire people to learn to love the life they're living, not the life they think they're supposed to be living.
Let's break that down. Like, what do you like? I feel like you see a lot more of that now, right? Like with people trying to be influencers and
yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I was a part of that too, right? Like I felt like I had to be a certain person to get a certain amount of followers or listeners or downloads or something like that to be successful. But it's not that at all, right?
Right.
It's living the life that we're here now because we're so much more powerful than what we think. Like I'm not just saying like as people, I'm talking about as conscious beings. Like
right.
We're so much more powerful, but we don't know what that means. Like we keep thinking that we're external from everything when actually we're more connected than ever, right? Like, I mean, it's just, I don't know. Break that down for me. What do you mean?
I agree with you when you say that, touching on that note about being, we're interconnected conscious beings. Is my whole life, I felt like it was, that the universe and earth was separate than me. Right. And really kind of diving into the science, not even getting spiritual or, cosmic or consciousness, but just the actual science of it is like, it was a huge breakthrough for me of realizing like, oh, the actual atoms in my body, the actual carbon, in my DNA is the exact same atoms from the nebula from exploding stars. Like we aren't participants in this universe. We literally, our physical bodies are manifestations of the actual universe. And so I used to kind of think of me external, where it's me in the world. And now, your life really changes when you realize that you're part of this massive living organism.
Yeah. You think about that, right? Like, so you have consciousness, you have this consciousness that I am me, right? Like Trey and you, Doug.
Yeah.
But think about down to the atoms that, just the cells in our body, they have consciousness too, right?
Right.
So like somebody said this the other day and I didn't even think about it. He was like, yeah, I talk to my body. I'm like, what do you mean you talk to your body? He's like, your cells are consciousness, right? Like they have their own consciousness. So why couldn't you talk to them and receive messages from them? I'm like, I never thought about that, right? Like, I mean, because if you have consciousness, you have awareness, right?
Right.
Does that make sense? Like, I don't know.
Yeah,
like,
no, I'm 100% with you. And it's right. It's almost like the way I see it is that our consciousness, so I am the observer of Doug, right? My body, I will eventually die and my body will be buried into the ground, right? What happens after, I don't know. And I'm not going to say that I know, because no one knows what happens. It's possible the lights go out forever and it's over. Totally possible. Or we will have an experience not inside of our body, right? So the way I look at it is like Doug's body, my physical body, Trey's physical body, right? That will end. And that's part of the living organism of the universe. The question is what's the consciousness behind it, right? It's the Mike. I don't know if you read Untethered Soul by Michael Singer, but it's his whole thing. Like, who sees when you see, who hears when you hear. When you say my cells, whose cells? You say I have cells, like my cells. Whose cells are those, right? And that's, you know, the old age question of time. And so it feels very much that we get dropped into these meat suits, or whatever you want to call it, that will expire eventually. They're going to eventually expire. And, you know, we have this time between we're born and we have this time that when we die, and we have this, you know, roughly statistically 85 years between our birth and our death. And it's like, what are you going to do with your time here?
Yeah, it just gets so frustrating, right? Because it's like, I don't know. I think the more that I have this, like, I want to call it an awakening, but I want to say it's more or less like I keep graduating levels. Like I keep, you know, raising my game, I guess, my internal game, where like I have insight, like through meditation or whatever. And like I'll have, you know, I'll have conversations with myself, and I'll receive, if you want to call it downloads from the universe, go ahead. But it's like, it feels right to me, right? Like it's very subjective, and that's all that matters, really. I mean, I'm so, like, after all of my research in physics, it's like I'm so confused on what reality is anyway. It's like I look over here and I'm like, all right, if I turn my head, does it really exist? I don't know. But is what I tell people, especially my listeners, it's like whatever feels right for you. Like the dogma that I grew up in didn't feel right. It was fear-based. I was always fearful. Like, am I good enough? I don't think I'm good enough. Like, I can't stop sinning. So I'm never going to achieve the happy place. I'm never going to go to heaven. Now it's kind of like, you're already good enough. You already have that inside of you, right? Like heaven is inside of you. And now I'm starting to understand what that is. Like, it is this awareness of that we are, you know, this understanding. It's not a belief anymore. It's a known. It's like it's who you are and what you're living is the heaven, right? Like the
kingdom is within.
Yeah. The I am, right? Like I am this, I am this. But what was dragging me down was that I thought that I was something that I wasn't. Like I was trying too hard to be something that I naturally was not. And like the disappointment from that kept, you know, stirring emotions inside of me that was like negative, cortisol and stuff like that, and, you know, anxiety and depression and things like that, because I wasn't reaching the goals that I thought success or society said that I had to reach. And those goals, everybody struggles with that, right? Like, I mean, you struggle with that, right? Like,
and I think it really reminds me of the quote I share in my book. I said, to become who you truly are, you have to let go of who you thought you were supposed to be. Right? Because we grow up and we're told what we should do, who we're supposed to be. Go get good grades, go to college, you know, get a good internship, get the high paying degree, marry the hot partner, get the nice house, get the cool new car, and then you're supposed to be happy. And so the subtitle, the subtitle of the book is Now What? And the now what comes from, okay, I've done everything I was supposed to, and this is it. Like, now what do I do? And I see so many people in that space where it's like we've grinded and we've done everything that society and our religion and our community and our family and our friends told us to do, but that's not who we truly are. And you talk about, you know, that knowing, right? You have that knowing deep inside of you. And when I tapped into my knowing through mindfulness practices of meditation and yoga, and really learned to build a relationship with what I call the universe, right? Other people call God, soul, spirit, Shakti, whatever it may be. Right. Once I built that relationship with my intuition and source, like, it will guide you, because you are a part of this natural rhythm of life. Like, you are a part of life. You are part of the universe. And if you can tap into that flow, right, it'll take you places and deepen. Like you're saying, you level up. It's because your awareness expands, and you really need to have a relationship with whatever that word is to you to help you get to those levels. Yeah.
Yeah, it's so funny though that we have these words, this word of
Right.
God, right? We open up
Yeah.
the bin and we put God in the box and we say this is
Yeah.
God. Like I have to stop doing that. Like I've done that for so long. Like, and I say, oh, I am God, right? Like I am God. Like if you do that, you put like what you are doing is you're putting limits in on that term. You don't even know. We fully don't even understand that term. Like God is
Yeah.
unlimited, infinite, right? Like even if you try to name it, like what,
And everyone has a completely different conception of what God is, right?
Yeah.
So God to you is completely different than God to me, right? It was completely different to the Buddhist down the street. And so I think whatever, anytime we put the label God on something, we're not giving it enough justice, because I think it's so beyond and incomprehensible from our human minds. We don't have the capacity to understand the creator. It's beyond comprehension.
It's not some guy with a white beard standing up there like saying you're not good enough. Yeah, right.
No, right. And the first time the first time my paradigm really changed with God, because I grew up Mormon, right? So I grew up in Utah. I grew up in Mormon. I went on my Mormon mission, right? And you're taught of this, all fearing God and His throne, and if you live your life and obey His commandments, then you'll get eternal life, right? Which is pretty common among all Christianity. But my first experience with psychedelics, which was a big no-no, right? Like growing up in white conservative Mormon Utah, you're taught that all drugs are basically methamphetamine, and if you do it one time, you'll be addicted and be homeless and then die. Like that's just the narrative. And so after kind of doing some study on the profound effects of psychedelics, I have my first experience. And in that experience, there was a moment where this, I can't use human words for it because it's beyond human understanding, but the way I describe it in the book is this beam of light socks me on the top of the head. And it was the unconditional love from the creator, from the infinite knowing source. And I always say, think of the happiest day of your life, right? That you think that's a 10. This was a whole nother scale, a whole nother 20 that you didn't know was possible. And the biggest takeaway that I initially felt from that was that I didn't have to earn it. There was no checklist. It was like, okay, let's see what you've done. It was available for me all the time. And not only was I the most beautiful creature that God's ever created, but every other person had that as well. And that we all have unlimited access to unconditional, endless bliss, ecstasy, love from the creator. And it doesn't have to be earned. It just is.
When you did that first one, was it under those conditions of like therapy, or like, you had a person there to help you go through that, or was it kind of like recreational?
No, it was at a party, at like a cabin party in the mountains.
Oh shit.
And I had this deep, incredible, indescribable spiritual awakening. And I had to distance myself from the party. I went upstairs into a room and like closed the door, because I'm conversing with God right now. Like I can't be listening to Lil Wayne downstairs.
So you said that you went through 2 years of that, like.
Yeah, it was. So that first experience literally blew the constructs of reality into confetti for me. I'm like, what in the actual hell just happened? Like, and it was actually extremely scary, right? Because here I was, like this Utah Mormon sales bro. I was very successful financially. I mean, I was making multiple six figures. I was young. I was blowing my money. I had the cars and the trips. I was like, I was living the life I thought I was supposed to be living. And then literally overnight, I, have this really deep spiritual experience that just blows the doors off of everything. And so initially I was scared to death, because it was like, oh, I took drugs and messed up my mind. Like I'm Looney Tunes now. Like the people, I remember having this idea where it's like the homeless people that talk to themselves on the street, they don't think they're crazy. They don't think they have any mental issues. And I'm like, I can't deny what happened to me last night. That was the most real experience I've ever had in my existence. And now everything that I believe to be true is up for negotiation. And I was just scared to death. But it left me in such a deep state of awe and wonder that I continued down that path. And so I did everything you could think of. Anything spiritual woo-woo I got into. So I don't know, Reiki, crystals, psychics, every psychedelic from ayahuasca to 5-MeO DMT to psilocybin to sound bowls to EMDR to working with the psychologists and therapists and going to Bali and doing the energy work and the sound bowls and the breath work and the Wim Hof and I mean, you name it. Like sound like I dove way into it because I'm like, what? I don't know what's real anymore, and I need to find my foundation. And like you said, that inner knowing what's true for you. I had to go find what was true for me because I didn't have it.
Mm. So that was like 2 years.
I have 2 years of just searching.
2 years of searching. Did your, I mean, I'm assuming you did psychedelics again, right? Like after that.
Oh yeah. I mean, that led me to, you know, working with shamans from Peru, doing multiple ayahuasca sessions, you know, working with 5-MeO DMT, like, you know, really, really exploring and trying to expand my mind. 100%.
Did it pick up from where it left off?
What do you mean by that?
So like Ram Dass, Ram Dass, there's a psychologist that worked with LSD, and every experience that he had, he did it for like, I don't know, probably like a 20-year experiment where he did like LSD with his wife, and he was a psyche.
Oh, you're talking about LSD in the Mind of the Universe?
Yes.
That book?
Yes.
Yeah.
Chris.
Phenomenal book.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it picked up, like it would pick up where he left off, right? Like he would stop for a couple of years, but then it'd pick up right there in that collective hell, right? Yeah. Like, did you ever experience that? Like, did you ever pick up where you left off, where you thought like this couldn't get any better, and then all of a sudden you picked up from that and you went and it got better, and then, or did you ever experience? This is 2 questions, by the way. Did you ever experience the collective hell?
So I would say the most difficult experience of my life is on ayahuasca, and the most beautiful, indescribable, blissful moment of my life was the next night on ayahuasca. And so the collective hell for me, I think ayahuasca gave me what hell was for me, which was I really value my mind and my ability to think and reason and to learn. And I had an experience on ayahuasca where it took away my brain power. I mean, I don't know how else to explain it, but I couldn't think, I couldn't reason, I couldn't form a future thought. My brain couldn't analyze data. And I was frozen in what I call in the book ayahuasca prison. And that was pure hell for me. Like, that is my version of hell. My version of hell isn't going down to a cave with fire and dragons and spears and being, you know, sad and depressed. It's literally not being able to use my mind. And it gave me my version of hell. And there was a really deep, profound lesson in all of it as well.
And then the next night you experienced your bliss.
Pure, if you had no trauma, no expectations, you were your truest, highest self, like experiencing bliss, ecstasy, love of pure God consciousness. I experienced that.
Jeez, I don't even know, like, where do you even go from there? You experience that. You come back to this body and you're like, shit.
So literally literally that's what happened is I had that experience where I was like, ayahuasca was showing me, was like, hey, if you live up to your truest potential, this is what your life can look like. And I was like, it was pure euphoria. And then I literally felt like I was reborn back into my body and was in my body for the first time. And I remember being like, holy shit, I have this body that can, I just think and I can create a fist. Like, I just think and it does that. Like, how does it do that? Like, that's insane. And then I remember having this moment of, holy shit, we're alive. Like, this is what it feels like to be a human. This is incredible. Like, holy shit, we're alive. And it was in my notes. And 6 months ago, when I was trying to figure out my title, I was struggling with it, and then pull up my notes, and it's like, oh, that's the title of my book.
That is solid, man. That is solid.
Shit, we're alive. Yeah.
So, like, now, what is your, like, you have that knowing, right? Like, what is your knowing? Like, what is it? Like, I mean, I know my knowing, right? Like, it's kind of like, I don't know if you were big into Robert Monroe books or not. Like, have you ever heard of him ever? Like,
I'm not familiar. No.
So he's got like Robert Monroe is the guy who had out of body experiences, and he founded the Monroe Institute in Virginia, where they use hemisync to facilitate like a week-long retreat where they try to influence through hemisync, like out of body experiences, and it's phenomenal stuff. But like, my knowing is, you just, I don't want to follow anybody. Like, I don't want to subscribe to anybody. Like, I just want to kind of have my own thing. Kind of like Wayne Dyer, right? Like, Wayne Dyer was his own man. Like, he wrote like, a shit ton of books, but it's like, he had his own knowing. And like, my knowing is mine. But for you, what path are you on right now? Like, where are you headed? Where do you want to go?
I feel like my purpose for now, right, or my knowing, my path for now is I do realize I have an incredible gift of teaching. Hence, my previous job where I made all my money, I was a company sales trainer for a multi-billion-dollar company, and I was able to help people learn this practice of sales, which then, blessed their lives financially. And now I'm just I know that I have the ability to explain things, profound, difficult subjects in a simple manner. Hence, my book is really easy to read with these complex subjects. And so my purpose for now is I feel like I'm here to help remind people why they're here. And that is to have an enriching human experience.
Why do you think we forget?
Because we are caught up in a story of how we think life is supposed to be going, and we fight with it. And that comes from society, that comes from trauma, that comes from experiences we had as a kid where we believed we were not good enough, right? That we're unlovable. Almost everyone I've talked to, without fail, has an experience when they were a kid where they then subconsciously created a story that something was wrong with them, that they don't deserve love. And then people then take that story and try and prove it wrong the rest of their life. And that's what they spend all their time doing, is proving that story wrong. And so with my work, I feel like, hey, let's go dive into that story. Let's learn to self-validate yourself, learn to fill that void yourself. And I know this sounds super corny, but like self-love is the ultimate superpower. Because if you need external validation, if you need mom's approval, dad's approval, your partner's approval, society's approval, your friend's approval, then you're at mercy of them. And they're in charge of your happiness. But if you learn to love yourself truly at your core, you no longer need external validation. You'll always want it, right? External validation feels good. But if you don't need it, you just want it, it gives you the power and the permission to be the truest, most authentic version of yourself. And you feel safe enough to express your true talents in the world.
Yeah, man. Oh, I love that. Another thing that people struggle with, right? Like, I don't know if you've followed this guy, Michael J. Rhodes.
Michael J. Rhodes. Yeah. Another name I don't know. Got two on me now.
Dude, man. So he used to be a farmer.
Okay.
And he's like 85 years old. He looks like he's 60. He's a mystic. I just found him like 3 days ago, just through YouTube. And he's out there farming, milking the cows. And he's like, why am I milking the cows? Like, I hate this. He's like, the answer that comes to him is fear. He's doing it because he's fearful that he won't earn money. He's fearful of going after the things that he wants to go after because he thinks he's going to fail. So all these fears are popping up in his head, and he's like, I hated it. And then this realization comes to him. And he's like, who am I? Like, what am I? Like, what is this? Who am I really? And he goes into, he's written a lot of books, and he talks about the self-love. He's like, I haven't felt anxiety or anger or fear in years. He's like, because I'm in love with myself, not just love, unconditional love. Like, and that's the guy who says he talks to his body. But I can think back on my life and think about the things that I did for fear, right? Like taking, doing certain things. Maybe people work in different jobs because they're fearful of going against the grain of society, going against their family if they are following in someone's footsteps, or, just what they're supposed to have, right? Like they don't want to go outside that box because of fear. Why do you keep going to work? I need a paycheck. I'm fearful for not having that. And they don't put that trust in themselves. Like when I tell you, you are a magnificent being, when I tell you that you are more powerful than what you think, and you don't believe that, you're depowering yourself. Like you're taking that power away from who you truly are. And I'm not saying go quit your job tomorrow and see what happens, because obviously your beliefs will not align with that. But once you start falling in love with yourself unconditionally and start believing in who you are, you won't fear dumb stuff, like dumb shit. Yeah. Right.
And those choices, of maybe leaving a job or leaving a relationship, those are natural occurrences of self-love, right? It's not like, okay, I need to go learn to love myself, so I'll have the courage to leave my job. No, once you learn to love yourself, you'll naturally leave your job, and it won't be a scary decision.
Sure.
Right. And so that's really what I hope to instill in people. It's like self-love, like is the old, like, just like that gentleman you said, it's like, I haven't felt anger, fear, anxiety, because he has unconditional love for himself.
Yeah.
And it opens up so many doors when you learn to love yourself.
I'm still working on that, man. I don't know about you,
Yeah.
but it's tough. Unconditional love, man. Like for myself.
Of course it's tough, right? Yeah, of course it's tough.
Just with those fears.
Yeah, we live in a very judgmental society, and it's easy to get wrapped up into that, whether it's through social media or peer groups and friends. And so, there's like these bars that are set, and of course you're going to compare yourself to those bars.
Oh man. I was reading the Afterlife Experiments with Gary E. Schwartz, and he did something with HBO and did some like some big double blind experiments with like 5 like Michael Jordan mystic or mediums. And of course it's hard for him to admit to any type of life after life situation, because he's a scientist, right? Like you can't have the only way you're going to know about life after death is if you have a conversation with a dead guy, right? Like, obviously they can support that in the lab. They can't do that, but he has this hypothesis, which I thought was very intriguing. I think it's the living soul hypothesis, where, you are that soul entity, but you're always getting better, right? Like you're not the body, you're not the person, you're not the small I or small self. You are that, that soul that is evolving. And so, and this is where I kind of like, I let go of the rope a little bit here and just kind of like relax. When I heard this, I was like, this is why you need to start taking time and enjoying the moments. Like you were talking about, like I can move my hand, I can see it, like enjoying the walks, seeing your kids, seeing your wife, seeing your spouse, seeing whomever, and like enjoying that, because you have eternity to do whatever it is that your soul wants to do. You know what I mean?
Can I read an excerpt from my book?
No, absolutely.
Right on that, because it's funny, because I literally just picked this up and read this section right before I jumped on the podcast with you. And so it's let's see where we're at here.
I love this stuff, by the way. Like when you say something and it sparks something.
Yeah, I talk about my last time. Where did it go here? Maybe I don't know my own book. I talk about my experience with DMT. My last time I did DMT, and I know it's in here. I literally just picked it up. I wish I had it marked, but I can't. I'll just explain it. I swear I just had it. But so the first time I ever did DMT, I was working with the shaman. And for anyone that doesn't know DMT, it's 5-MeO DMT, which is Sonoran toad venom, basically. And there's this secretion where you tickle the toad's belly and it shoots this excretion out, and they catch it on a piece of glass, and then it'll dry. And they let it dry overnight, and then you scrape it off, and then they put it in a pipe, and you literally inhale it through smoking it. And you have this experience that is so indescribable. And it lasts for, I know, between 15 to 40 minutes, and then you're completely sober. It's like you blast through the veil and you come back. And the first time I did it, I leaned back, and she has this pipe, and I take this massive inhale. And she said something before I did it that actually really resonated with me. She said, if the thought even occurs to you that you should take more, take more. Don't wrestle with it. Don't analyze it. Don't debate it. Just do it, right? If you can have the idea to take more, that means take more. So I'm like, okay. So she has got this big Indian headdress on. This is a native woman. She's pulling tarot cards. She's got music going. It's very tribal. And so I take this massive hit, and I fall back onto the bed. And I remember, and I mean this in a very literal way, that like, I remember feeling I could reach my arms across, and they literally expanded throughout the whole universe. Like my consciousness was so big and so expansive that I really could reach both ends of the universe. And I completely forgot that I was Doug. Like Doug no longer existed. And I didn't have any recollection of being Doug. And I remember hearing like this little like, and I'm like, what is that noise? And I'm like, oh, that's my body breathing out the smoke. And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm Doug. I forgot I'm Doug. And then I remember the thought comes, take more. And so I remember like, okay, don't wrestle with it, just take more. So I lean over, and for her, she picked up that I wanted more. I couldn't really say words. And so I take another massive hit, just, and Trey, holy motherfucker, like I get in this cannon and I blast through the universe, through the veil, and there are no words to ever describe it. There's not even close, but the best English human words I can use is I was swimming in infinity with God. And my consciousness, like Doug, my whole experience as Doug became the size of an atom. And then that turned into a water droplet inside a water drop. Like it zoomed out and I just realized I was in a water droplet. Then that water droplet dropped back into the ocean. Like my entire human experience was an atom in a water molecule in an infinite ocean. And that once it had gone back into the ocean, you can't go get back that water droplet because it's now merged back in with the ocean, and it was over. And I was universal God consciousness for those couple minutes. And then I finally came back into my body. And the biggest takeaway was like, I can't believe how annoyed I get when that girl that I have a crush on doesn't text me back. Like how incredibly silly is that? And like, I can't believe that I get annoyed when there's like a 10-minute line at Starbucks in the morning. Like how silly is that given the consciousness and how teeny tiny small our whole human experience is given the grand scale of consciousness. And that's really, really helped me in my normal everyday life, realizing like just being Doug, just being human is the ultimate gift. I've already hit the lottery. So while I'm here, how can I maximize the richness and deepness of my experience and do all the things that are unique to Doug? Like, yeah, I can go do ayahuasca on a Friday night, but like I'm Doug for this short time and I like college football and I like eating nachos and I like golf and I like drinking beer. Like I'm still going to do all those and I'm doing the very best. I'm going to do it all out and be completely fully present while I do them because this ends.
Man, that's like such a great story. I have so many questions now. So I've never experienced any type of psychedelics, right? I'm a psychology student. I'm going back. I'm like the old guy, but very intriguing. So when you say that you're that water drop, like an atom of a water droplet back into the ocean, once that Doug personality merges with the ocean, does your awareness that do you become that ocean?
You are everything. You are the ocean. You are the awareness behind the ocean. You are it's so hard to explain.
I know,
but you are the consciousness and creator behind all things, period. Like, and when it's really interesting is what really kind of looped it together on a scientific level, being logical about this, we know that our physical bodies are made from the same atoms as exploding stars. We know that, right? So let's play backwards, right? The exploding stars come from nebula, right? And if you play it all the way back, right? What's the first known source? What happened 13.8 billion years ago? The Big Bang, right? And the Big Bang is where everything originated and everything started from there. So if you play back your atoms all the way back, we're all the Big Bang. And if you're the Big Bang, I'm the Big Bang, the microphone's the Big Bang, my computer's the Big Bang, everything originated from that. So the analogy that Alan Watts uses is he says, if I have a tincture of ink and I throw it against the wall and it explodes and there's ink all over, the ink on the far right of the wall is the same as the ink on the far left of the wall, even though they're super far. But if you play it all backwards, it all came from the same tincture. So that's the Big Bang. The Big Bang threw it against the wall. So we literally, when people like all the hippy dippies, like, oh, we are all one. Like on a scientific level, that's true because all of our atoms originated in the Big Bang.
That's an awesome metaphor. I mean, the ink, I never even thought about that. But I had a thought the other day. I was like, what if, the I am awareness, like when I'm just walking, when I'm in flow and I lose that self, that loss
sense of self,
right?
Yeah.
am I just that in everybody else? But we're just so conditioned to think about our personality, right? That's the ego, right? Like, am I that awareness, that small moment of zero personality? Am I that in everyone else? It's kind of weird. Like, I can't describe it. Like, I can't,
Yeah.
it's, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
and
I
then
get it.
but then in everyone else's description of that, even in like Monroe, when he was talking about his ultimate journey, when his personalities came back to what he calls the highway, because the highway is his soul, when he reconnected with that, then he was able to pull back and see all the other different highways and how they're all connected. And then he was able to pull back from that and see how, I mean, there's just massive levels upon levels upon levels upon levels of larger consciousness that we're connected to. It's just like mind blowing. Like the idea, the mind of Trey, like can't handle it.
Yeah. Yeah. I believe that there are infinite levels and infinite dimensions within infinite depth. And our human brain can't figure it out.
Yeah.
But we don't have, so like, do you have an animal, a dog or a cat?
Yeah, I have a dog.
Cool. So if you spent your entire life fully 100% dedicated to teaching your dog French, will your dog ever speak French?
Hell no.
Doesn't have the capacity. The brain in your dog does not have the receptors and the capacity to comprehend French, the language of French. I think that gap in our human brain is infinitely just as big of a gap between us and the creator.
Sure. And
our human brains we can't understand it because our brains don't have the capacity. We don't have the receptors.
Well, you talked about when your consciousness came back to Doug, right?
Yeah.
You mentioned that I have won the lottery. Yeah. A lot of people don't understand that because they look back, they stand back and they say, how can I have won the lottery? My life is like this. Like, yeah. Can you describe that?
Yeah, I think it goes back to more of like, we've all experienced trauma. We've all experienced pain, and we get stuck in those stories, right? And the reason we don't feel excited and enthused and holy shit, I won the lottery of my life is because we're carrying around pain, and there's like a lot of crazy shit has happened in our lives. Like I get it. Like I didn't love my life until I was 28, because I was in pain. And that's really my whole message, is to help inspire people to like, hey, like there is a way out. Like there is a way to enjoy your life. There is a way, but it takes work, right? Mm-hmm. Like doing self-love work is not easy. Dealing with your trauma is not easy. I mean, I was sexually abused when I was 6, and it really affected me for a long time.
Sure.
And it was something I never talked about because it was heavy and it was scary and it was embarrassing. And so I carried that heavy coat, this massive heavy parka that was suffocating me for so long, for 26 years. And I just got used to it. And because I was carrying that coat for so long, that's what I thought life was, because I didn't realize I could take the coat off. Right. And so that's my message, is to help inspire people like, hey, let's go, if you lean in to the scary parts of your life, you realize there's a zipper. And when you realize there's a zipper, you can take the coat off and be like, holy shit, I didn't realize I was carrying around all that weight for so long. This is actually really nice. It's really nice in here. And that's the message.
Well, did the psychedelics help you take that jacket off?
The psychedelics didn't help me take the jacket off, but in a way they did. They just showed me what I needed to look at, right? They gave me the roadmap. Psychedelics don't do the work for you, but they show you what you're blind to. Right. My favorite analogy is, we all want to climb to the top of the mountain, right? We all want to be on the top of the mountain, right? We want to be the leader, whatever it may be, the success. And we're at the base of the mountain, and there's a million paths, and only one takes you to the top of the mountain. And so sometimes you start on a path and you're like, I don't think this is it. And so you go back to the base, and other people are saying, come on this path. And you're like, are you sure? No, I trust me. It's this path. All psychedelics do is they just tell you which path you have to take. You still have to climb the mountain. You might sprain your ankle. You might run out of food, right? It might rain on you, right? You might drop your backpack and it might halfway down, but at least you're on the right path.
Sure. Because that shit's it's unconscious, man. You can't see that unconscious shit. Consciously, we are so limited in our vision of who we are and what we're trying to be. And it's like through meditation or through psychedelics or through some type of spiritual experience, do you see the darkness, right? Like the shadow, like Carl Jung used to talk about. Like you don't see that shit, in our everyday consciousness because we're so limited with that, right?
Yeah, and I think as you bring up Carl Jung, I think the whole foundation. I think honestly, my favorite quote and the most profound quote and the most true quote is by Carl Jung. That's affected me the most. He says, "Until you make the subconscious conscious, it will guide your life, and you will call it fate." Right.
I love that, man.
That's the number one quote, right? And we all have these shadows that are weird, that are in our subconscious, that are guiding us in the way we make decisions because we have fear, we have trauma, or we're afraid. And so we're not willing to deal with those shadows. And so they're behind us, guiding and steering our ship, and we don't even realize it.
Well, what would you recommend to people? Like people that, let's say they're not comfortable with psychedelics, like what would you recommend to them?
Yeah, I mean, for so many people that are completely, this is a brand new ball game, right? They've never even dabbled in this stuff. I'm a huge fan of therapy, right? Start with a very basic talk therapist, right? And that's where you'll help unveil some calm. I think by the time you need a therapist, it's too late, right? And I think everyone should have a therapist, and you should always be talking to a therapist. So talk therapy is a really, really good place to start. And before that, I always like to diagnose stories. And so we all have a story about ourselves in the world that is usually filled with a lot of shame and a lot of guilt. And it's something we're trying to hide from the world. So I always ask people, like, what would you be absolutely terrified and mortified if the world found out about you? For me growing up, it was if a girl saw me with my shirt off, right? I'm the fat kid, right? I don't deserve love, and I crave love, right? And I feel like I want love, but don't see me with my shirt off, because then you'll see that I'm broken and that something's wrong with me.
Wow.
Right. And I was trying to hide that from the world for so long. And so I made a bunch of money in my early 20s. So to prove to people why they should love me, because I was trying to gather an asset to prove value in the world. So my whole life I had this story, and then the rest of my life I was trying to prove it false.
Man, were you nervous about this book coming out?
Not at all.
No.
Yeah, not at all. I'm very proud of the work I've done. I mean, I basically took 2 years off of my life and did the work. I did the therapy. I did work with psychologists. I did the EMDR. I did the neurofeedback. I did psychedelics. I did the integration. I worked one-on-one. I had one point in my life, I had a neurotherapist, a psychologist, a spiritual guru, and 3 therapists.
What's your favorite modality? Like, what's your favorite thing that resonated with you?
Today, it's a combination of early morning meditation and yoga. That keeps me in check, right? But before I was conscious and before I had done the heavy lifting, for sure, working with ayahuasca was the most profound. That was the most revealing. That was like 20 years of therapy in one night. And that showed me what I needed to work on.
How does that work? Like you take it, right? I don't know if you, I guess you, I don't know if you drink it or something like that.
Yeah. So it's very ceremonial. It's sacred. The word I like to use is sacred. It's not like, hey, Friday night, let's do ayahuasca. No, it's like doing ayahuasca sucks. It is not fun. It's extremely uncomfortable. It can be really painful. It can be confusing. It's disorienting. It's uncomfortable in your body. Like it is like, if you told me that I was doing ayahuasca tonight, I wouldn't be prepared because I haven't done the diet, but it would make my stomach churn. Like it's scary. It's intense. But the way it's set up, it's in the ceremonial setting with a facilitator or a shaman. And the way I did it was in groups of about 8 to 12. And it's a tea. You drink about, a shot glass worth. And there's prayers and there's chants and there's, you wear all white and you drink this tea. And the best way to describe it is the spirit from the other side of the veil greets you and shows you maybe some of the difficult parts of your life that need healing to really break your heart open into love, right? The main intention is it wants to improve the quality of your life. And for that to happen, there's a lot of things we have to address.
Were you ever scared, like when you took it and you were like, oh shit, like I don't even know what to expect. Like I don't know what's going to happen, if someone's going to jump out. Like I don't know if I'm going to see like dead people. I don't know what's going to happen. Is guy going to jump out from under the veil? Like, were you nervous?
Terrified.
At all? Yeah.
No, absolutely terrified. Like more scared beyond all means. right? It's for me, my experiences with ayahuasca are very intense and very scary. It's very disorienting for me, and I lose grip on reality a little bit. And I don't enjoy doing it. I actually hate doing it, but the results I get from it are so incredibly profound. You know, and I'm at a point in my life where it's like one night a year, I'll do it just as a little tune-up, but I don't take very much. It's just kind of to really kind of get me in that kind of rhythm. But yeah, the first time I did it, man, like I was literally had the cup and I was like, holy shit, are you sure you want to do this? You know, because I've seen, I mean, I have close people in my life that have gotten into the psychedelic space and have had psychotic breaks, and it's been scary, and I've lost friends because of it. And so on a side note, a word of caution, anyone listening, if you have bipolar disorder, schizophrenia, or any really intense mental illness, like I would absolutely stay away, and please, you know, don't take my word for it. Seek medical professional advice before engaging in any of these compounds, because there is risk for sure.
Sure, absolutely. There's a lot of risk, right? Like, I mean, I've heard stories of people not coming, you know, like you're just talking about, like not able to come back from that, and you know, just do your research, like he says, because it's it could be you know, groundbreaking therapy, like, you know, MAPS, what they're doing, and Johns Hopkins, but you need to know what you're walking into, because if you're it's not like you're not doing it what you did that one night at a party, but after that it was more so like finding out who Doug is, and like what the shadow, the healing, what is the shadow, where is the shadow, what do I need to work on? Yeah, man, I don't know, man, it's just so, like, your story is amazing, because it's like, you know, that self-love, it's so tough, man. Like you talk about like not even wanting, you know, you didn't want to take your shirt off in front of girls. For me, it was like, am I enough? Like for my, you know, I just wanted my parents to love me, right? Like I wanted them to be proud of me, right? Like, so I tried busting my ass doing things, and maybe some things I didn't really enjoy, just because I wanted to be loved. And now it's kind of like stepping back. Now, obviously I'm 38 and I have some years under my belt, but I did the work. I did the research. I read a lot of metaphysical books. It's led me to where I'm at now. It's not, you don't just end up here. You got to put in the work. But now it's kind of like, man, my message to people is like, you're worthy as you are, no matter what you are. Like, even if you think you're the worst person in the world, you're still worthy, you know, like that unconditional love has got to be unconditional.
Yeah. It's literally, I think it's the ultimate cheat code in life. Unconditional self-love is the ultimate cheat code in life. Absolutely. And it sounds like you figured that out for yourself too, which is really exciting to see.
Yeah, man. I want to know, what was your favorite chapter writing in that book? Like, what's your most favorite chapter in that book?
It's the follow the white rabbit chapter, right? It's the night of the cabin, that cabin. It was literally like, here I am, this 27-year-old financially successful guy that kind of has like a nice car and kind of has had a deep void in my life. Like I was lost, you know, I was dealing with the death of my dad as well. But like on paper, I looked very successful. And I was kind of like this Mormon sales bro, like kind of a douche, like kind of arrogant, kind of cocky. And then it was kind of like, here I am at a party. Sure, I'll try, you know, this psychedelic. And then literally just like the universe just covers my whole world and flips me upside down and just strips me of everything and just leaves me raw and bloody and beaten. And I had to build it back together. So reliving those stories, I mean, the story itself is really, really insane. There's a lot of really weird synchronicities. So for those listening, if you want to dive in, check out the book. I go into a lot of detail. Even if you're not into this, it's a really fun story to read anyways. And so reliving those moments and just being like, wow, like I can't believe that happened to me. It was fun to write.
Awesome. How can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so I'm most active on Instagram, and I respond, like I'm not Instagram famous by any means, so I respond to DMs. So if you have something that caught your attention, you want to shoot me a DM, I'll respond to you 100%. I have the capacity. And you can find the book. We hit #1 bestseller, which is crazy. I was not expecting that. So we hit #1 bestseller, and it's on Amazon. Holy shit, we're alive. And I would love everyone's feedback on it.
That is awesome. Dougie Fresh. Big question, right? Like, and I don't ask a lot of, well, maybe I do ask a lot of people this, but I'm going to ask you because of what you've been through. What do you want your legacy to be here?
I want my legacy to be that I helped inspired people to live a deeper, more enriching, fulfilling, fun life. I
Perfection.
reminded people to have fun with their life.
Have fun. You hit the lottery. Doug, man,
Yeah.
thank you so much for joining the show.
Thanks for having me, brother. This was great.